Let's go.
What a lovely day!
Andy, there's a whole world out there. Jump in.
Can you dig it?
Yeah.
You must always pay strict attention.
I was just completely enamored by it the entire time.
Dude, he did not have to go that hard.
I know, man. Isn't it wild?
The Jared Cast.
So it begins.
I am recording.
And the Zoom's already going.
Okay, cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome to an episode of the Jared Cast. I'm going to be your host. My name's Renato, and this is part one of the Beatles history. You can go check out the part
two.
Oh, freaking heck. Well, there you go. This is what I get for getting dropped in the deep end, but that's what I meant to say. Part two. Thank you, Jareds.
That's all good.
I know, right? I bet I bet your listeners are super surprised to hear my voice first and foremost. It was going to be a solo one. I was going to take over. But the Jareds were insistent that this podcast was called the Jared Cast, not the NATO Cast. So I had to bring them on along. So this is part two of our Beatles crossover. How are you guys doing?
Good. I'm good.
I am also good. Man, what a great episode that was. Episode one of this.
That was crazy. I can't believe all the celebrity guests we had.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Ricky Gervais popped up in that Zoom call.
And such controversial opinions about Abbey Road.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you call it, NATO? You said it was the worst thing since what was it?
It was the worst thing since Hanson. That's what I said. That's what I said. I've recorded myself shitting, and it sounds better than Abbey Road. So there's some really intense emotions on that one album.
Oh man. Please don't kill us, audience. Please don't kill us.
If you're confused, this is a crossover episode. Hi. Our other podcast, NATO and I's other podcast, the Listen to This podcast. You can find part one where we went through the entire history of the Beatles. This is part two. If you want to listen out of order, go for it. We don't give a shit. We're recording them out of order. I'm not going to listen to both. They're both probably going to be great, but do it. Today we're watching Beatles movies. We got a documentary about the Beatles. We got a movie from the Beatles and a movie inspired by the Beatles. And I could not be more excited. But we got a top three first, don't we, sir?
Top five. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. NATO put this one on us. Top three opening scenes in movies. Or I don't know if you guys went to TV or not. Did you?
No, I did not.
No, I did not.
Okay, cool. Jared gonna pull out another Pokemon reference.
Not this time. I might try to squeeze one in there. But no.
We'll see. But yeah, this one was actually kind of tough because I was like, I had to realize like, oh wait, is this a scene or is it a sequence? Does it even matter? Is it the first thing I actually see, or is there something else that I forgot? But yeah, like I really like these three. But let's kick it around because I don't want to. I got one that's like kind of famous, so I don't want to steal it from anyone. So we'll kick it around. We'll go to NATO first.
Okay.
What's your number three, my friend?
I went the opposite direction and chose famous scenes. So, if I took yours, I'm sorry, but my number three is Spike Jonze's 2014 movie Her. I really love the just black to close up of Theodore Twombly, already immediately setting the tone for the intimacy that's to come. It feels rather uncomfortable, but also not, because it's actually really aesthetically pleasing with the nice like pinks and oranges, along with just like, I think that's the most normal I've ever seen Joaquin Phoenix look, like just super normal. And then he immediately begins to like, I guess, monologue. Like in this case, he's like a letter writer, but he's like speaking, and he's saying all these like super intimate things. And then you have like that really nice, like, kind of like zoom out of like the entire like building, and everyone else is doing it, and I just think like the whole technology / like intimacy thing is set up really well, and it's just really lovely. So yeah, that's my number 3.
Yeah, dude. I've been rewatching a lot of like old Joaquin Phoenix too, and it's like, or not old, but like classic. And it's so good. His whole career, man. Yeah. Like I rewatched Signs like a month ago, and he's excellent in there. And then I rewatched Gladiator just last night, and oh my god, it's so great. He's so over the top. It's
yeah,
fun. Yeah,
he is.
Nope.
Okay, cool. So my my I'm sorry. I thought when you said like, oh, what's your number 3? I was kind of like, oh, are we gonna go like around, like a round table?
No, we are.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I was about to go 2.
it's the same as your other 2 episodes.
Yeah, you've been on this podcast the most.
I know, but I was just every single time, I'm just like, should I go now?
Yeah, should I keep going? If you want, you can.
No, go ahead. I'm gonna keep it. Keep it traditional.
Okay, my number 3 is one of the most fun opening scenes that I've seen, or that I could think of, and that is from Edgar Wright's Baby Driver.
Ooh.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. You get a lot of info about a character despite like zero dialogue on his end. You know essentially the plot of the movie right away. It's fun as fuck. The music is great. Bell bottoms go hard. It's just a fantastic scene all around. It's just impressive and entertaining as hell.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Agreed.
Mine is also very is a very high octane opening scene. Of course, you know, it's not a Jared Cast episode if I don't mention Mad Max Fury Road. But I gotta mention Mad Max Fury Road. There's technically like some little like news clips, in audio and monologuing, and you know that shot of that classic shot of a nuke going through a forest and like ripping the trees apart. But the opening scene of the narrative of the story shows us a 2-headed lizard in the foreground, and then it scuttles towards this mysterious figure, who we realize soon after that it's Tom Hardy, as he's taking a piss in the middle of the desert, and then he stomps on the lizard and just bites its head off, and he turns around to the camera, and he's just the most like mad looking. He's truly a Mad Max. He's lost his humanity completely, and then he hears the cars coming after him, and you know it's a simple scene, but it's one that like immediately sets the hero's journey, from like being just an empty shell of a person, a hermit, a desert hermit, into someone who learns how to become a hero again. So yeah, Mad Max Fury Road.
Cool.
That's a dope opening. One thing I will say that always bothered me is I went to go watch it with my friend, and I think at this point everyone kind of like low key was making fun of it for it, but the fact that like everything is loud as fuck in that movie, like the cars and everything like that. So, but the one thing that's always kind of bothered me is like Max kind of leaves, right, and then it's complete silence, and then out of nowhere you just hear like the like all of them come at the same time. I don't know why personally for me I was like, I feel like I would have heard them already. Like they wouldn't just come out of nowhere like.
Yeah, it's the Buster Keaton law of sound design.
Yeah,
it's not on screen. It don't exist.
I mean,
Dude, I mean, it works. I think it works. I just that one time, my friend who usually is not like a movie guy, he was just like, "Man, that's dumb. Why you couldn't hear the cars at all?" And I was like, "Huh."
I think it doesn't matter. I think it's a movie where a guy with a flamethrower guitar is sitting on top of a truck while it's going. So I don't care about realism.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, that's the thing that like would like kind of like frustrate me. I was like, this movie's completely bonkers, and that's what you notice.
Yeah, dude.
Oh man. But anywho,
That's your number
yeah,
two?
my number two is another classic one. It's a movie that I love. I'm pretty sure a bunch of people love a lot, and for me it's close to perfect. And it's the Godfather's opening scene. I just think that whole interaction with Bonacera and the titular Godfather just kind of is incredibly elegant, but I love how dimly like lit it is. So it already kind of creates this very ominous, uncertain like aura, and then you kind of like it unveils more, and you find out they're at a wedding, and you're like, this is so strange. It's like obviously like this is a famous scene, so everyone's seen it hopefully by now, but at like first glance you're kind of like, oh, this is something shady's going on, but at the same time you're at this like family gathering, and it's so intensely personal and wonderful, and then you get the whole Bonacera asking him to kill somebody for hurting their daughter and so forth, and it's just such a cool introduction to a bunch of cool characters too, and I think it's just one of those classic ones that are just so well written and so well shot that you can't forget it. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
There you go. For my number two, we're taking it back to '92 with a directorial debut. And that's Quentin Tarantino's directorial debut with Reservoir Dogs.
Hell yeah.
Not everything I love about a Tarantino film is in this opening scene, but a lot of it, mostly dialogue. I love it. You get what you need to know about every character to make an assessment on who you think is the rat. Kind of give it away a little too hard, but that's okay. But yeah, it's just a great opening scene with a lot of character introductions that really carries the rest of the film on its back in a way, because it's the only time you really get to see who these people are before they start turning on each other, and it's great, and I love it. I think it's an underrated Tarantino film. I've always been shouting from the rooftops how good Reservoir Dogs is.
Oh, I love Reservoir Dogs. I think it's all downhill from Reservoir Dogs. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Dude,
I'm just kidding.
Before you said I'm kidding, I kind of was just like, what? What?
No.
I thought we had controversial takes in the last.
I know.
Yeah, no, it's really the indie filmmaker's Bible. Like it's so good. And it's such a unique point in history because it's one of those movies that kind of kicked off the boldness and the sharpness of 90s cinema that I missed from the 70s, because you had the 70s where everything was super radical and crazy and like people were really going out there, and then the 80s, at least in America, it was super like not tame,
gritty and like,
but like the heroes were obvious, like everybody needed to be likable, except for a movie. Well, there's a few exceptions, but one of the biggest ones is a little film I like to watch. It's called Blue Velvet.
oh, nice, yeah.
I love this opening
Jared
scene.
Cast episode if he didn't bring
David Lynch and Mad Max Fury Road. That's everything you need to know about my personality.
We could close.
Yeah. Yeah, my number two is the opening sequence in Blue Velvet. She wore blue velvet. Like these really lovely, shimmering portraits of Americana, and you can tell automatically that something's wrong. Because you start to hear a rumble, and the music fades out, and the camera just slowly lowers down into the grass where you see bugs crawling around, and it kind of establishes that whole theme of things hidden underneath underneath the surface, things secrets that we keep from each other and from even ourselves, and hidden desires, hidden darkness, and it immediately sets the tone for a crazy movie. So yeah, number 2, Blue Velvet.
That movie's amazing. It's a good movie. Okay, I guess it's my turn to unveil my my number one, the one that I don't think is gonna be surprising to anyone, but I have the opening scene, or I guess sequence you can call it too, of the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, okay.
I think that one. I know everyone gasps in sarcastic surprise. The Lord of the Rings fan who always has to mention that they're Lord of the Rings fan, favorite opening scene is a Lord of the Rings movie? What? But yeah, I just really love how Peter Jackson managed to really kind of sum up a shitload of lore in like a nice little quick, like 2 to 3 minute, like they forged rings, and like it's so cool. I love how would you like what is that like when you make it like super dreamy, like everything's kind of glowing. I don't know what kind of filter they put in. Yeah, it's something like that too. But like it's incredible. It feels very like dreamy and kind of scary at the same time. Like the making of these rings, you can like really palpably feel how important everything is, and then not to mention just the wonderful Cate Blanchett's like super ominous like voiceover that just narrates it all. She's just like telling you like, yeah, this ruined everything because men's hearts are easily corruptible and this and that, and you kind of have that like emotion going, and then you like she tells you about the story, like the whole like how the ring came to be in the present, obviously in the present time for that movie. And then the freaking amazing Howard Shore score comes in, the da na 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 na. Like you just it's so perfect. It's so amazing. Gets me pumped every time. But that's my favorite opening scene for movies of all time.
Hell yeah.
It's also very topical because the Beatles wanted to make a Lord of the Rings movie.
They should have.
Oh man, I forgot about
Kubrick
that.
to direct it. They literally went to Tolkien and they're like, "Can we do it?" And he's like, "No, please fuck off."
Okay, do you know why Tolkien said no, or was he just being like, "No, I don't want"?
Well, because it would be terrible. and he also like had a weird vendetta against bands because he like grew up near a band and they were way too loud, and so he just hated bands.
What?
So that didn't help. My favorite part of that though is that John Lennon was going to be Gollum.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
great. That's great.
Who was everyone to be? Was fucking Paul gonna be Frodo and
Paul was Frodo, George was Samwise, John was Gollum, and Ringo was
Gimli?
no, I think it might have been
Aragorn?
Gandalf.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
remember. I don't remember who Ringo was supposed to be. But
That's amazing.
No matter who it is, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
That is.
I'm like already running through a fantasy cast in my head of like musical
Dude,
artists from the
same.
60s. Like,
They were gonna have like all original music about Lord of the Rings.
yeah, dude.
Hey, do you know how to get to Mount Doom?
Ringo does have an obsession with rings, so I guess it would have been canonical. Anyways, I got a number one. It's a movie that we've talked about, but I think only Jared's talked about it. I don't think I've talked about it yet. Maybe I'm wrong. It's Drive. It's Drive. My favorite car chase scene in any movie. One of my favorite openings of any movie. I love it. I don't think a movie has started out and like got my attention so quickly as Drive did.
Yeah.
Immediately, I wanted to watch the movie like 4 times just by the opening scene alone. I love it so much. We've kind of raved about it in the past. So I'll keep it brief, but Drive, number 1.
Nice.
Hell yeah. My number 1 is also a single syllable title. That's the only thing it has in common with Jared's number 2. I feel bad because my segue for my number 2 was so good.
It was amazing. I'm not gonna lie to
You
you.
can't give enough props for that. This one, not so much.
No. This is my worst segue ever, but it's okay because this is my favorite opening scene ever. It's, of course, the opening scene of the movie Wes Craven's Scream. This is my favorite slasher film, probably of all time. Maybe tied with Texas Chainsaw, but I really love this movie. And I love how smart it is. I love the like it's so well directed and so well paced. The murder of spoiler alert, Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore, who's excellent as usual, but she's like the first billing on the poster. So nobody knew in 1996 that she'd be the first to die, and there's this really awesome phone call where he tricks her into giving the wrong answer for a Friday the 13th quiz, and then kills her boyfriend and disembowels him, and then she gets so close to surviving. She gets so freaking close to yelling and yelling help to her parents, and he gets her, or they get her. And it's super tense. The timing of it with the Jiffy Pop, and the way the pop, like she puts it on in the very beginning of the scene or in the conversation. And like by the end of the scene, like the whole kitchen's on fire, or that part of the kitchen's on fire, and it's so brilliant, in every sense of the word, brilliant.
Dude, that movie's so fun. And that opening scene is like fun until it's not. Like I'm not. Once it gets like serious, you're like, oh gosh, like this is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's definitely my favorite slasher of all time. So Kevin Williamson, man, shout out to you if you're listening. Hopefully one day. That opening scene was awesome.
Nice.
You know what else is fun until it's not?
The Beatles.
How's that for a segue?
Once again, he bests me in the segue
every
game.
time.
Dude, he's good at it, man. He's super good at it. You should, if you were on the show, if you were on, listen to this podcast all the time, he's just like one-upping me. Sometimes I feel like a straight fool.
I actually do okay on that one. I try my best.
Yeah.
Dude, no, I mean, I genuinely feel like whenever I listen back to our episodes, I'm like, God, I'm so like comedically inferior.
I mean, I'm honored, but it's hard. Day is night.
Yes.
No, you fail. No.
You know,
That's why
actually,
we draw the line.
That's the line.
this is it. We're done. Oh man! But
great,
no, thank you, Jared. Actually, you perfectly introduced the movie that I chose. It was obviously I got the movie with the Beatles in it. Well, I mean most of the other movie had the Beatles in it, but this one has them playing themselves, but it's scripted. But it's 1964, directed by Richard Lester. And why are you laughing at me, Jared? Why are you looking at me like that? Are you holding back laughing?
Because it's time for Jared reads poorly written reviews of movies that we're watching because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff.
That was okay. I did not even see that coming at all. Cool.
Bad reviews.
I was waiting for you to say the title and then I was going to go for it. But
Oh no, dude, that was great.
Wind up ready.
Go ahead.
This
I apologize.
installment comes from Ruprecht, who says, "It's been a boring movie. I should be sleeping like a log." Gave it a 2 out of 10. And here's their review. Listen up, you mindless, brainwashed Beatles fans. Just skip reading this review and click the "did not find this helpful" button at the bottom. Go on. I order you to do it, you lemmings. I order you now. Are they all gone? Okay, let's proceed. I am a Beatles fan, but I don't mindlessly applaud everything they've done. The first half of their career, up to and including this movie, they were just pretty boy pawns of the record industry. And that's exactly what we get. We get some record producer's lame idea of a Beatles movie, not a Beatles movie. They act like, talk like, and look like a record producer would portray. Nothing human, nothing passionate, not even funny, just reading lines and lip-syncing their catchiest tunes, somewhat poorly, I might add. Paul gets a few lines wrong, but the camera just keeps rolling. Maybe some folks would laugh at the fast-motion antics of the Fab Four running around a football field and acting like clowns, wrestling and hitting each other, but I'd just as soon skip over that as get to the heart of it all. Surprise, there's no heart. This is just endless parade of predictable gags and goofiness that becomes downright embarrassing after the first 20 minutes. I repeat, this is not the Beatles. It's a carefully packaged dress rehearsal of what fans wanted the Beatles to be back in the early 60s. Fans loved it back then, I'm sure. But in retrospect, it's no more interesting than watching a 1964 commercial for Comet liquid soap. Skip this one, folks. Proceed directly to Yellow Submarine. If you're feeling especially adventurous, mind-altered, watch Magical Mystery Tour. Those films have personality.
Wow.
Someone enjoys late Beatles.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. I was like, I don't think they. I guess they don't like any like simple pop music. They don't like any of that stuff. They don't like any of that tomfoolery. They're serious. They wear their turtleneck while they listen to Rush and swirl around some wine.
No holding hands for this chap.
No, I mean, maybe he does have a good point. I guess he does. If it's like, I mean, it's completely subjective. I can understand it, but however, this was my first time watching it. I thought it was super fun. Yeah. Personally, I thought that it was. You could call it a bunch of like nothing going on, but I think the looseness of it allows for more moments of like personality to show. I actually like that, like the whole Paul McCartney's grandfather's with him. I think that's incredible. I like that Alan, like the writer Alan Owen, like studied a bunch of like interviews. I'm sorry.
I was trying to do a raptor impression.
I'm sorry, but I know Alan Owen. I like the dedication he had, like to like actually like writing a script that like actually had some things that the Beatles had said, or at least would come off as the Beatles. It works well. I know these. I mean, he mentioned like that they kind of flub lines or something, or whatever. I actually felt the opposite, because like the entire time, at least when I was watching it, I knew it was scripted, but I kind of went around it thinking like if it was just like a crew going along with the Beatles, like in the day in the life, and it still came off incredibly natural to me. I didn't know I don't know the Beatles personally or anything like that, but I really really did enjoy most of it. The music's great. Me personally, I really enjoy earlier Beatles too, so I guess I'm kind of biased in that sort of sense, but. The whole like the sequences when they're running around, right? I think they're just stellar because of the music and because of just the shenanigans they get into. My favorite part, however, and for me it came out of nowhere also, was when the Beatles ask Ringo to watch over the grandfather, and he's telling him, all right, well what are you doing? He's like, I'm reading a book. Like, first of all, they say book like that, book. I'm reading a book. He goes, you should be parading. You shouldn't be reading a book. You should be parading and living in life and whatever. And I love how Ringo takes that so goddamn personally. He has like an existential crisis like halfway through the movie. And he just says, because they're going to go on TV and perform. And he just says, nah, screw that. I'm just going to go parade. And he literally goes around getting in trouble at a bar. It's a wonderful sequence. It's probably my favorite part of the movie, and I think Ringo in this movie is actually probably my favorite out of all of them. Surprisingly enough,
Yeah.
his quote also is legendary. Are you a mod or are you a rocker? I'm a rocker, like, or I'm a mocker. It's such a great line, and it definitely made me laugh. I mean, even for today, I find the whole movie incredibly funny. I don't even know how to say it because I don't want to say that this movie isn't worth like really watching it for the filmmaking, but I couldn't help but just feel more so just like this is just a glimpse into like a life of them, especially coming to especially this being like the peak, not the peak, but like the beginning of like Beatlemania and like the whole franticness of their life. All of a sudden they get thrusted into this like limelight. And you could feel it. Like, I think what I also like is that even though the movie's funny, you can't help but feel very like claustrophobic because they're always constantly having to like be on the go, and I think that's when like help comes in, both with the movie and the album, where they're just kind of like almost like a reaction to that. Like they're just like, oh my goodness, this is incredible, this is insane. But overall, I know I haven't spoken much about the plot, but I just wanted to say that I just really enjoyed the movie for what it was. It actually made me feel more curious to check out their music. And Jared L knows that like I'm very indifferent to the Beatles, but I think this kind of endeavor, having to do it this way, allowed me to kind of like almost become friends with the Beatles, if that's any sort of like notion to say. But I think it was just a super great movie. In my opinion, I haven't seen any of the other ones, but this was a really stellar watch. I think the humor is still great. Still, the grandfather, I forgot the actor's name. I apologize, but the actor is really good and really funny, and just the music is amazing also. So, should I give my rating right away?
Yes, sir.
I probably
Go for it.
I would probably give this one. I really love this one. I think I'm gonna give it like an 8.5 out of 10.
Very nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jared, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I love this movie as well. I went a little lower. I went 7.9, but for me, this is like I'm not a huge fan of musicals from the 60s. There's very few of the classics that actually like really jump out to me. But this one I think is a very underrated old musical. Because you don't really think of it as a musical, because of exactly what Renato said. It feels like you're just watching them in their life. But I think that's very, very difficult to execute because it is a fictional film and it is executed like with intent, with artistic intent. And I think that artistic intent was super well executed. It's hard to be yourself on camera, and these guys do it with these guys make it look easy, and the director makes it look easy. There's a comprehensive story and a script, but you have 8 static characters. I love that the editing kind of has this weird music video logic before music videos were even a thing. I like that you can balance all of those things with scenes that show the Beatles' sense of humor, and the kind of they were known for their wit in the interviews and stuff, but I don't really feel wit here. I feel like they're just goofballs who are having the time of their life, or trying to have the time of their life while they're being while their efforts are being like stretched. I think there's also some really great concert cinematography and editing. Of course, some dated angles and zoom techniques, but it's part of the movie's aesthetic. It feels cool, and like the fact that they played "I Should Have Known Better" in an animal cage, like while the train is bouncing around. Like that's so dope to me. That's so cool. I do agree that Ringo's my favorite of all of them, and I kind of like that. Like Ringo and George get a lot of the screen time and a lot of the attention because, when I didn't notice this. This is my second viewing. I didn't notice this the first time, but like Paul kind of takes a back seat, and it's kind of interesting that he's the least like present character in the movie, but it's cool, and I like that about it. There are several like comedic scenes and musical scenes that I really love, and I've said this before on the other podcast, but Hard Day's Night is my favorite early Beatles album, and so like I really and it's not because of this movie. I just genuinely like that album. I gave it a 7.9. I think there's like a couple scenes where I'm like, okay, I know the next part. Get to the next part. Like I just want to rush to the stuff that I like, which is fine.
Heck yeah.
That's just me. But yeah, Jared, what do you think?
I also really enjoy it. This is my second viewing as well. I gave it a slightly lower rating than you, though. I gave it a 7.7. So not much lower, kind of on par. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun. It's not like cinematically groundbreaking. There's nothing really mind blowing here. It's kind of just a dialogue movie, and then the musical. But they do it so well that you can't help but love it. The Beatles' charm comes through. I think it helps that they're like genuinely hilarious people, and so that like is a reason why it works so well. They're not like trying to be funny but don't know what it's like, and they just play themselves, or like kind of cartoonish versions of themselves so well, and it really cemented their image, for better or worse depending on who you ask. But I think it's just such a iconic and fun film that I enjoy it. I enjoy it from start to finish. And Ringo's also my favorite in it. But also because they kind of make fun of him a lot too. And so he's like also the butt of a joke a lot.
Yeah.
And that shines. Like when he doesn't have any letters at first.
Yeah, right?
Roasting him for it. And then he gets home, he's like, oh, how it must have cost you a fortune in postage. He's got a real large family. you just get a lot of great lines from Ringo and about Ringo. And so he kind of steals the show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's my
great.
favorite one was he can't help if he has a hideous hooter for a nose.
I also like when they ask like George, they're like, so what do you call that hairstyle you got there? And he's like, Arthur. It's just
it's great.
I just love him. I love it.
So good.
Did it? Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's a real interview where they're like, somebody's like, "Oh, are you guys gonna get a haircut?" And they're like, "Oh, Paul got one yesterday." It looks identical to everyone else's. Like everybody would always ask about their hair. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
It must have gotten annoying at some point. Just like always, constantly. What the hell's wrong with your hair?
So Renato, did watching this movie change the way you feel about Hard Day's Night as an album?
Not really, because I was like you. I also heard the album before I watched the movie. Yeah. So I've always enjoyed the album by itself. I think I think I like the album even more now. Not because I think like the visual aspect of it. I like how you said you said it too, where it was just like it felt more music video ish, like where it took like the more most of the narrative or the cinematic narrative kind of stuff that was going on was based off like kind of like what we know now as like modern music video. It almost kind of creates this like feeling of like memory, right? Where you're like, oh, this song came on, it coincides with this, you know? and it adds to the goofiness, and it adds to like the charm of like the simple pop they used to make then. And I think that for me, it makes the album much better as a whole. But I liked it before I watched the movie, so yeah. I think I should mention it. Well, this is part 2, so part 1 definitely will kind of say the same thing. But I have never. I have never really like taken that much of a dive into the Beatles at all. So, and to be honest, when you guys asked me when you guys asked us to do like the crossover, I was low key kind of hesitant because I was like, oh man, I don't want to like. It seems like such a huge thing to conquer, you know. Yeah. But watching Hard Day's Night, I think. I needed to have like a personal kind of connection to it, I guess. And watching Hard Day's Night, I think the reason that I liked it so much is because I felt like even though it was scripted, I understand. I really felt, I guess, almost like a part of that crew that was going on, the Beatle crew, the like everything going on and all that stuff. But did you guys like? I don't know how to put it. Did you guys ever get kind of like lost in the movie sometimes? Because I think Jared mentioned that like there's not like much going on plot wise, but there's like 8 static characters, and I felt like at times for me I had to watch it like more than once because I think maybe I didn't feel distracted, but at any point did you guys feel like lost because so much shit was going on at one point?
Not really for me. I can't speak for my first watch though. I don't. It was when I was like a tiny boy, and so I don't remember if I was confused. I was just like, oh, singing British people,
Right?
But I don't think I did, just because in my mind this is just watch funny talented motherfuckers be funny talented motherfuckers. And so, like, I'm not watching it because I'm, like, on the edge of my seat. Like, oh, are they going to run away from these screaming girls?
Right.
In a good... Are they going to get to the show on time? Like, I don't know. I'm not really, like, following the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really... It's not in the forefront of my mind. So I'm just like, oh, let's watch lads be lads, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, my first...
Oh, sorry.
My first watch was actually last year. And or was it 2 years ago? I don't know, but it was pretty recent, and so I was already like kind of used to weirder movies and weirder structure, and by the time I got to this, and so like even though I wasn't expecting it for this kind of thing, like I thought the whole thing, I thought it was a concert film when I was going to go into it,
Yeah.
and then it was something entirely better, but I welcomed the confusion and the wait, what? That's awesome. That's kind of my reaction when a big transition would happen in a scene, or when they would just cut to the grandpa doing something random. I was like, wait, what? This is cool. I didn't expect this.
See,
so,
and I think that was like my issue again. Once again, the failed escapade of like watching a movie a certain way has like thwarted me again, where it's just like I watch it and like I don't know what I was expecting with a Hard Day's Night, you know, because like people spoke on it and everyone says, wow, that's like the Beatle movie to watch, right? And so I was like you, I was expecting just like almost like a concert flick or something like that, where it's just like a bunch of stuff going on and whatnot. But then like getting into it, and all of a sudden it's like the moment you get into it, it's immediately like, oh yeah, that's Paul McCartney's grandfather. That's not your grandfather. Your grandfather's at home. Well, I have 2 grandfathers. Am I not entitled to 2 or whatever? Something like it's like that line. That was super great. Like it's wacky, and I think at my second time I think that it was not so much confusion as to what's going on. It was more like, oh wow, we're really jumping from place to place like incredibly quickly, which, to be honest, it works really well because it's a Hard Day's Night. It's incredibly like fast moving. The movie's super short, so you have to kind of like absorb as much as you can. Even that incredible opening like sequence I love when they actually trip over each other, and then the whole story behind like how the person behind them, I think, was one of the, I forgot her name, but she like stopped the actual real crowd, like stop, just enough time for them to get back up and start running again. Like, it's really cool. But yeah, I think for me, the confusion just came from like didn't know what to expect from it at all. Like even I think that's the joy of like having Ringo there was great, because the whole scene with him going to parade around came out of nowhere, and you're just like, oh, all right. He went from reading a book to just literally going out and playing darts for whatever reason. He feels like he needs to live life, but I think it was a cool like moment. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't really have many memorable moments with like the most popular Beatles, like John or Paul.
Oh, really?
I was just so like enthralled with Ringo, because I mean, you're right, Jared, like Jared L, that like they basically made Ringo like the butt of the joke, but him being the butt of the joke actually for me made him more likable, at least for me. He came out very like humble and everything like that, and I like that a lot. But yeah, I mean that's all I really came with the table. I'm sorry that I don't have any more like ammunition.
That's perfect. I actually I slightly disagree. I love this scene of John playing German submarine in the bathtub. I think that's that's a great John.
Disappears.
It's a great John moment. Like, and then you leave.
What are you doing with that?
Like, he gaslights his poor producer like 3 times in the movie. It's so funny, and like the fact that he left his hat and the submarine in the bathtub, like he knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah, he actually also has my favorite line. He's like, "How did you find America? Turn left at Greenland."
That's a great line.
Yeah. Should we go into, or did you have anything, Jared?
Well, I don't know. Or what was the rest of your sentence? Was it going to be favorite scenes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then that's what I have.
Okay. Cool. Why don't you start us off, Renato?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of spilled the beans, didn't I? Like I said it multiple times, but I'll.
Beans are all over that table.
Yeah, sorry. So I mean, I guess I'll just say it once again in case you missed it, but just briefly, like just the whole sequence with Ringo and Paul's grandfather. I think that for me is like, I guess for my style of humor, just incredibly funny.
Yeah.
I love that Ringo took it so seriously. Like I don't know. I think the reason why I find it so funny or great is because it seems like something I would do. Like if somebody told me and came up to me and was like, "What are you doing? Making a podcast? You should be going outside and living life." Then I think I would have been like the guy going, "Oh yeah, you're right," and like stepping out and doing all that stuff. So I think that for me is great.
Yeah, honestly, when we were in China, I did the same exact thing. I just went out by myself and took a bunch of shitty photos and got lost for a couple hours, and then came back. I didn't get in trouble with the police, but
Right. But, it's because you're not Ringo.
That was unexpectedly relatable for me.
That's a good point. I think that's what where the endearment comes from too for me. It's just that like weird innocence that Ringo kind of like exudes. But
yeah,
there you go.
I have a few favorite scenes. I like George Harrison giving fashion consultation, just for no reason. It's interesting. Like they try to capture, because like we didn't know what the fame what Lady Gaga calls the fame monster. We didn't know what that was back then, and we didn't know how dangerous it could be for people, or like how exhausting it could be for people. And I like that this movie like really tries to capture that. And then, through George in that one scene, there's like, it's just totally absurd, and he's frustrated and he just leaves. And like, because like, why would they expect his opinion, like him to have like a good opinion about something he doesn't know about? But it's just because he's famous, or he has that face or something. And so I like that scene a lot for that. I think the first Can't Buy Me Love sequence with them sprinting down the stairs, and then doing like the Three Stooges fast forward through the through the open field. That's a great like just montage of them jumping, and then Ringo just jumping like 1 inch above the ground. Yeah, I mentioned the bathtub. And I also like that when the butler is hiding in the closet, he's reading a magazine with Elvis's face on it. Yeah, those are my main favorites.
Cool.
Yeah. You guys kind of touched on some of mine. Like the Ringo escapade is great. The George Harrison and the John in the bath were some of my favorites. One my top favorite is probably just the like back to back interviews at the party they go to.
Yeah.
Where you get that turn left at Greenland line, the Mocker line. There's also another really funny one that killed me, where somebody asked, "Do you often see your father?" And he's like, "No, we're just good friends."
That was good. Yeah.
Was that John?
Yeah. It was Paul. Wasn't it Paul?
Was it? Yeah, it was Paul. It was
Oh, okay, my bad.
It was Paul.
Paul does have memorable moments. Yeah, so that was hilarious. The letter scene that I mentioned earlier is definitely up there. And then in a different, it might be the same montage, but a different part or a different montage. There's a lot of montages of them running away from screaming women, and so they all kind of blend together. But when they all they go through a train, like just out the other door, and then they go into separate cars, and then get out, and then go into one car. Something about that was hilarious to me. Yeah, it's just those were my favorite, but it's just such a fun movie, start to finish. It's kind of not a lot of depth, like you mentioned, Jared, that they it kind of shows the weight of like fandom and stardom, and like that's kind of where you get any real depth in the film.
Yeah.
But even then, it kind of just scratches the surface of that. They're not like that exhausted by it, and they kind of enjoy it and jest around with it quite a lot. But it's just a fun movie. It's just good. Renato, you also mentioned like how improvisational it felt, which is good. I think it works in its favor as well.
Yeah.
And I think every scene we mentioned has that like charm to it. And then you get movies like Magical Mystery Tour, which are improv, and they're the worst thing that the Beatles have ever put out. It's the Star Wars Christmas special of the Beatles.
Now I need to watch it. Now I need to watch that one.
Yeah. It's a movie's bad when it like goes straight to DVD despite having the four most famous people in the world.
Is it Pretty Dog or is it Pretty Pants?
Is pretty. It's like a dog wearing pants. It sounds interesting, but it's pretty shit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'd say it was dog, but I like dogs.
That's awesome. Actually, but my other favorite line in the interview scene is when they're talking to Georgie, like, has success changed your life? Yes.
That's great.
Did you guys have a favorite musical performance before we move on?
You mentioned it already when they're in the animal cage for some reason. They all just like the way they like kind of just like sit down and like solemnly join. Grandpa too is a weird like beginning to it, but it feels human and like normal. And then the performance itself is fantastic as well.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that one too.
Yeah. I also want to shout out, and I love her. I love the blocking of it, the way that like. The way they're staged is kind of interesting with Paul and George up front, and then George like just has one leg up on Paul's stand, and he's playing the guitar like this. It's kind of cool, and then John's off to the side, and then Ringo's off to the other side, but further back. I don't know. I like.
You should be.
Hey man. Hey. Yeah, I don't know. I have a I just really like unique geometry in scenes like that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Shall we move on to the Compleat Beatles?
I think we shall.
Yeah, the Compleat.
But before we do,
Cool.
Bad reviews.
it's time for another installment of Jared reads poorly written reviews because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff. This one comes from someone who doesn't have a name. That's Jesse Ross. I had to get this one from a different site than IMDb because there's no funny or bad reviews of this movie for some reason. Maybe because
Interesting.
it's a weird, obscure documentary that's real hard to find. Maybe because it's the greatest documentary ever made. But literally, like IMDb, the highest or the lowest rating was like 6 out of 10, and I was like, well, there's no comedy in a mediocre store. So I went to I think Rotten Tomatoes or something for this one. They gave it a 3 out of 5. Said good but far from definitive. And they say this. I don't mean to sound overly critical. This is a decent Beatles documentary for what it is, but it has some major flaws. Make sure to salute major flaws. One, no actual footage from Help or the Magical Mystery Tour films here, only still images. I would like to think that they could show at least a short clip or two from the movies just to make it more complete. Number 2, when describing the final 1966 tour, the audio is actually used from a 1964 concert. Number 3, on the same note, when the narrator mentions Candlestick Park, the footage is shown as a completely different show. Number 4, during this 1964 Ed Sullivan Show segment, you don't actually see the Beatles play, only random audience shots and the studio version of All My Lovin'. Number 5, few factual errors in this film. For example, the narrator says that Paul bought a guitar to help him through his mother's death. The truth is, as Paul says in the anthology video, that his dad bought him a trumpet and Paul traded it for a guitar. This was a reasonable effort in the 80s, but I think it's now obsolete with the release of the anthology videos in 96. That's the real Compleat Battle.
Wow. That
Yeah.
person's that person reminds me of that one dude who's like obsessed with that like one particular artist or band, and like they know everything about everything, and they're just like
actually is everywhere.
actually like when he found out like the scene with or the clip of them in Candlestick, like he probably knew that by like memory. He was like, that's not Candlestick Park, that's not it. I knew it.
Oh man.
I don't know. It wasn't the most funny review I've brought to the table, but
No.
I thought it was kind of funny how nitpicky he was. But nonetheless, we've got the Compleat Beatles, spelled Compleat because they wanted to be like the Beatles, and I think it's kind of clever or whatever. It came out in 1982 by Patrick Montgomery. And it's a real in-depth look at the entire history of the Beatles, essentially, up until their breakup in 1970. And they go back real far, which I liked. They didn't just start with like Ringo joining or something. They went all the way back to like John's high school band, which I thought was cool. I liked the detail that they had. Their ability to find archival footage was impeccable. I mean, it's the Beatles, so it's going to be pretty accessible, but they still managed to find some like deep cut photos and
Right.
deep cut information that I really appreciated. But man, is this a boring documentary?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it. It's a snoozer. This was my first watch. I want to pick something new because I was curious. It just felt like I was watching a textbook. Wasn't really like blown away. It was very well done and incredibly well researched. And so like I was still interested because it's a topic I like and it's well made. But like the voiceovers were a drag. They had some clips of like the Beatles talking and doing their own thing, but it was like mostly just the guy over like photos or old
Yeah.
video, which I didn't really super care for. I did like he mentions that they use this in the bad review. He mentions that they use the studio version of like the Ed Sullivan Show and shit, which I actually appreciated because the real footage you just hear screaming the whole time and you can barely hear them play. And so like while that's an important thing, I would rather hear the song because you still get the beginning of it and then that like hard cuts to the studio version. And so I'm kind of thankful they did that. I don't think that was a dock against them. I think they included enough screams that you get the gist of Beatlemania, really. But at the end of the day, I was informed but not entertained. I gave it a 6.5. I think it's super well made. It was an impressive feat, but I wouldn't want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Thoughts, Mr. Renato?
Yeah, I actually kind of like liked it a tiny bit more. Once again, because I didn't really know the in-depth stuff. I know that an hour 49, I think, or
Yeah, somewhere around there.
yeah, just a little bit under 2 hours. Like even still now of what we know, I think it's not. It is in depth, but I think you said it best. Like it's in depth in the way a textbook would be in depth. Like there's always kind of like. There always be kind of more, but also it's more so like here are the facts. Let's not really do anything else. This is what happened, and then they got famous. Why? But they got famous. You know what I'm saying? I agree with you too. When it comes to like the concert parts, it's so grating to constantly be hearing like shrieks of ecstasy and pain. I guess I have no idea. Like it's just. It becomes a little overwhelming when you want to hear like the actual stuff going on. The very very monotone delivery too. Also, if you're like not sitting down, if you're like laying down, like I at one point I think I was laying down because I came back from the gym and I was watching it. Don't do that. You'll fall asleep. So I had to like start the movie over again. That being said, however. I do really enjoy the history of the band in general. Like if you just kind of like remove all the things that me and Jared kind of said, I still think it's incredibly like well researched and really interesting. Especially the fact that they talked my favorite part, and I guess I guess my favorite scene or whatever. But my favorite part of the movie is actually when they talk about like the early like music with Paul and everything in the Quarrymen. With like the whole skiffle era in Liverpool, hearing about all that stuff, and then actually hearing from like other people that aren't necessarily like the Beatles or anything like that, it's just like here's what skiffle sounds like, and then you find out that the music that they made, especially early on, was just like sped up skiffle with more kind of like simpler lovey-dovey kind of lyrics. It was interesting because like I didn't really know any of that. I didn't know that there was like that kind of like. Almost country-esque rock and roll that was going on over in Liverpool. Also hearing about kind of like their burnout is always interesting, obviously, especially like once Beatlemania happened. I think what I also enjoyed is like they were happy with the success, but I think what was really detrimental was just like how sudden it came. You know, it wasn't like obviously fame, you can't really tell when it comes and goes, but like it's either there or it's not. And I think like when it hit them that it was there, I think they kind of like most famous people, they kind of get burnt out eventually. But it was interesting to hear all that stuff. For me, it got kind of slow when it came to like the tumultuous stuff with the Beatles, because I think that's like the stuff that everyone wants to hear. But I genuinely enjoyed hearing about the good times they had most of the time, how they came to be, and all that stuff. And just hearing from like producers and, you know, people who work with the Beatles was just super cool. Just to like even hearing that story of like Yesterday, like how bringing like the subtle strings, like I've heard that story before many times, but always hearing it over and over again, it's such a cool little tidbit to hear. It's like, oh yeah, we just told Paul to play with his guitar, and then we just added like something like little like string section and whatever, and then boom, that's what you got, and it's just so cool to see it all come together. Yeah, it is a tiny bit of a drag, I will admit, but I still enjoyed it, and I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
Groovy.
Very nice. Very nice. I appreciate the movie and all of its information as a Beatles fan, but I think it's sorry, what?
I was just laughing.
Oh, okay. But I think it's a pretty like average film, a pretty average documentary. I think this technique of archive material and voiceover, like, I think I've seen enough of it in my life. No disrespect to Malcolm McDowell. He's got a lovely voice, but there's way too much of him and way too much of the narrator.
Yeah.
Some like I understand if you can't get access to the Beatles, who 3 of them were still alive at the time, but they were all very busy. But like you couldn't get like any of their peers, any other like fan club fans, like any voices that actually like knows who these people are. Like they got a few. Like I think George Martin coming into the movie brought a little bit of life in there. I liked his tidbits, but it takes but also like there's a lot of filmmaking stuff I just didn't click with. There's no score. Which I understand if you want to make the Beatles music stand out, but like especially when you're going before this, it takes 26 minutes to get to 1961, and so I understand like I appreciate the background, like coming to Liverpool, spending the first 40 minutes to set these guys up as underdogs because, it's cool, but like I need a little more to carry me through that stuff, and like when you have a lack of a score, and it's just narration, song, talking head, narration, song, like it feels janky to me.
Yeah.
But I do like that they set them up as underdogs in the first half. I can imagine that being really impressive for audiences in the 80s who only knew about the music and only knew about like, they only knew what the tabloids said or what they were saying in interviews. Like they didn't know anything like really intimate about them. And so I think this is a remarkable tool for Beatles fans to have before the internet. And I know, when I nerd about something or someone, I want to know every detail available. So I definitely, I understand why the movie's like considered like a good Beatles movie before the anthology. I think one other thing that bugged me was the fade out on Hey Jude. I thought it was really sloppy. That was just a little nitpick.
Yeah.
The ending I'm a little unsure about, but we can get into that later. I think also they did one thing I like about the movie is that they get so close to doing that cliche thing of blaming Yoko for the breakup.
Yeah.
But then they save it and they go like, oh, these guys were actually dicks to each other. Like, so yeah, I applaud the movie for that. But yeah. I'm gonna.
Did you give your score?
Oh yeah, 5.6.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I. Yeah,
I think it's interesting that Nato, you loved the beginning of the movie and that kind of the happy times. Jared, you kind of hated everything, and then I think for me the most interesting part was the like psychedelic era and like our trip to India with the Maharishi. I thought that stuff was the most interesting. I don't know why. I think the visuals got a little better. That's kind of when George Martin comes in a bit more. And so I think that's kind of where it found its stride. But it was a little too late, which is it's weird that we all kind of unanimously were lukewarm on this film because it's a very highly rated. Like it was like a 92 on IMDb or something. Like everybody was loving it. And I think that is because it's super informative. It's just, I don't know. Maybe because we've all watched so many more entertaining documentaries that we're all just kind of like, you could do this better.
I think you hit it right on the head. To be honest, I just think it's just so informational that I think most of the time people could just kind of like push aside all of the other stuff
Yeah.
just to kind of like sit down and watch something like, oh, here's just the history, like a history reading of like the what happened with the Beatles. Here's the factual stuff. There's no usually documentaries, like especially the ones we are so used to now, is just like there's the director or the people making it have like something to say about it. This one is just like, here's the Beatles. Like here's what happened.
Yeah.
Here's some archival footage. And here's Malcolm McDowell. He was in Clockwork Orange, so here you go. But I know I'm making it like more simple than it is, but I think that I truly believe that's what it is. Most of the time, I think it's just the fact that it's well researched, and at least for me, someone who didn't really do any digging on the Beatles beforehand, like watching it the first time, you kind of have to like get sucked in, and that's what happened to me, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least personally, from my perspective as a first time viewer and a first time even like digging into the Beatles, I think that's the reason why it comes off so, I guess, good, right? Because even between all of us, I still had the highest rating, right? And that was my first watch, and that was my first time actually like really knowing about the Beatles. You know, I'm pretty sure you guys had prior knowledge of them. All I knew was that people were arguing like, oh, did Yoko break them up or not? You know, that's usually like the main like the main point of discussion usually. But I think the film kind of, for me, was informational, and I enjoyed that a lot about it. Still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, especially watching this after Hard Day's Night, you kind of just lose the passion of it. Like, you lose who the Beatles are. You learn, like, what they did rather than, like, who they are, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't get any of the funny quips. You don't get, like, them talking about themselves or anything like that. Like, weirdly enough, the thing missing from this documentary is the Beatles, even though it's all about the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so I think that like charm just kind of fades away from it.
That's a good point.
You guys have any favorite scenes? Most of my notes on this movie were just like facts about the history of the Beatles, and we already covered that, so I can't like. I got nothing, honestly.
Well, like before we do favorite scenes, I guess I can repeat like my question to you that I gave to Renato. Like, did any of the information like recontextualize or like shift the way you view their music? Like, from the stuff, the new stuff you learned.
Not really, because, like, I don't know. I already knew a lot of the info here. My, like, first deep dive into the Beatles was in community college, like, my freshman year.
Wow.
I had a music history class, but it was the history of rock and roll. And this motherfucker
Nice.
was the biggest Beatles fan ever. We spent like a month and a half just talking about them.
Wow.
And so like I got some pretty in-depth history on it. So I kind of knew most of what they were saying in this. Although there were like tidbits that kind of were interesting. Like Stuart Sutcliffe. Like I didn't really even know about him at all. He was one of the original members before even Pete Best joined, and like him, and then his like passing too early. I thought that was interesting, but like that didn't really recontextualize the Beatles for me. Some of the stuff about like Yesterday being their first departure to like a different style. And like some bits like that made me kind of appreciate late Beatles a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really anything I didn't already know. That sounds kind of douchey, but
No, yeah, that's fair.
yeah.
I think, and well, I'll ask you this, Jared. L. Sorry, Jared L. Do you think?
White
Do you
Jared,
think
please.
like?
The episode came out. We can use this.
Okay, good. Okay, white Jared. Okay. See, like I've avoided that so well.
It doesn't really matter.
Okay,
It's still
white
weird to
Jared.
say to a human, but
Dude, I mean, it was weird for me. Like when I first met you guys, when I first met Jared A, I was like, you were like, you guys had nicknames for each other, and I was just like, oh, I mean, am I allowed to like do that or?
this is the thing.
Well, Lay calls us BJ and Whitey, so it doesn't like it's comparatively you're fine. Like,
Oh my goodness, that's great. Okay,
My
sorry.
favorite nickname out of that is still Beej.
it's so stupid.
Beach. Okay, cool. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so so White Jared, what I wanted to ask you was, do you think that like, okay, if you were like to just look at it, retrospectively, and you were to have these three movies on hand, obviously we haven't spoken about yesterday yet, but we're talking about Hard Day's Night and the Compleat Beatles. Do you think that the best way to I guess enjoy that would be to watch the doc first and then watch Hard Day's Night for someone who has never seen any of these movies?
Yeah, I think so. Because then you get the story and like the music out of the Compleat Beatles, and then you get like, okay, but here's like a look into their personality, and like sure, it's Hard Day's Night's like fictional, but it's essentially a documentary. Like they
Right.
went through all that shit. It's just a fictionalized version of it. Like that's how they were in interviews. That's how the fans reacted. Like it's pretty realistic to the experience, even if the details are fictionalized. So you get like, okay, here's everything you need to know about them. Here's how they like really were, at least in the old days. Obviously, they were completely different people after they smoked weed with Bob Dylan once, and we're like, this is our whole personality now. And so, like, I think that would be a good order. And then yesterday, I think is a good. Well, it's a closer. A good.
Right.
Good. We'll get there. I think it's decent, but yeah, I think that would be my ideal order for people.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Favorite
Yep, yep,
scenes? Anything stick out to you?
Um.
There's not like traditional scenes in this movie
Yeah.
because it is kind of voiceover with pictures, but
I mean, oh, go ahead, Jared. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I like the Sergeant Pepper sequence. I think that's great because there's a new talking heads besides the only 3 people that are in the first half. But like you get to really see how the rest of the music world like viewed that album and what that album meant to them, and like they, I know that album's great. It's one of my favorite Beatles albums, but like hearing other artists, hearing other producers say like, this is why it's great for me. I think that was really special. I think the behind the scenes of Let It Be is dope. There was a lot of controversy about the mix, about Phil Spector's mix when it came out, and the whole wall of sound
Yeah.
idea. But like I liked hearing about that. I liked that it was a big part of the movie. I think it's cool that Let It Be kind of speaks for the band, and they close the song on just the audio of that. Yeah, those were the big touring Rubber Soul. I didn't know any of that, so that kind of made me appreciate like what's the one right after it? Revolver. It made me appreciate that album a lot more because it's not my favorite Beatles album, but I still like it, and I like it a little bit more now that I know that the background behind it.
cool.
Yeah. I would. Well, Jared took one of mine. The rubber tour thing. I also didn't know any of that stuff, so like that was super interesting to know. And I've already said it once, but I think my definitive favorite part was just learning about the skiffle stuff over in Liverpool. I think that was just ultra cool. Anything like learning about any kind of like new genre that I kind of didn't know about, or some kind of like music movement is always interesting. So like kind of hearing almost like what we would consider here country, but like over in Liverpool. And it's just a little bit like just to hear honestly just to hear twang somewhere else that's not here, definitely kind of like ruffle my jimmies, and I wanted to know more about it. So that was probably like the most interesting part for me.
Yeah, that's actually how a lot of like classic rock bands started. Like Led Zeppelin was a skiffle band originally too. Like it's weird how many bands were that.
Yeah, definitely.
Any others you wanted to mention?
That's all I got for you, man. To be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. I also liked the skiffle part. I like that they actually it was brief, and I don't think they touched on it enough. But like the appropriation of like skiffle music, they're like, this music came from like black jazz musicians and all like these people, and then white people stole it, and now we're at Elvis, and so like. I like that they actually touched on it, because like being a documentary in the 80s, I didn't expect them to. Like I expected them to just like gloss over and be like, this is a wholly original thing that white people did. And so it was nice to see that they at least touched on it a bit.
Yeah.
So I liked that. I mentioned their trip to India, because you also get some more Beatle like interviews and stuff. Like I think John has a line about the Maharishi where he's like, we thought he was more than human, but he turns out he's just a guy. Like we were wrong. And I thought that was interesting for sure too. And so like it was little moments like this. There was one shot that I also really liked where it was John Lennon's face, and it was animated, and it was like switching colors to the music. That was pretty tight. I like the Sgt. Pepper sequence that Jared mentioned. And then I think that's about it that stood out to me. It was informative, but not my favorite.
Yeah. But that's like like I said earlier, like if you're a hardcore Beatles fan, like this is definitely one to check out, because it's
Yeah.
I too love boring documentaries of shit that I love. So I don't blame anybody for giving this a high rating on IMDb.
Yeah. Like if you listen to our episode on Listen to This, and you're like, oh, but I want a little more nuggets, definitely listen to it or watch it, because it does a good job.
Hell yeah.
What were you saying, Renato, before I rudely interrupted you?
No, you didn't really interrupt anything, man. Don't even worry about it. I was just gonna say that I just think like, I don't know, because I think like documentaries are like, even though you like, we as filmmakers, we like try to watch everything. So like we're, especially like you guys are really familiar with docs. I feel like when you kind of like watch movies like this, like for me personally, like I'm not watching docs very often, which I should, to be honest. But watching any kind of doc, I feel like first and foremost, they're there to kind of like present information, and I think that's what like a lot of people kind of like approach docs in that sort of sense, where it's like, hey, there's a documentary on the Beatles. I think people instinctually immediately are like, oh, we're gonna hear about the history of the Beatles. And so when it is presented that way, I think people just go, well, they were accurate. It was a really good time, I guess, or like it was a really good like informative thing, And I think like the more you watch documentaries, I think you kind of find like your own kind of things that you look for in documentaries, So, I mean, in short, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is like it's subjective.
I feel like this movie was the like documentary that people who hate documentaries think all documentaries are. Like they're like, it's just boring old man voiceover over like archival footage.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Anything you want to touch on?
I'm good.
I'm chilling, dude.
Cool.
Scrambled eggs.
Should have called it scrambled eggs.
So the next film by Danny Boyle called Scrambled Eggs is
One that we'll get to after Jared reads poorly read reviews of movies that we're watching because it's funny and it makes him laugh and stuff.
Cool.
Bad Reviews.
This one, I actually have two. Ooh,
Good,
to
good.
make up for my shitty one in the last one, and also because I saw one and I was incredibly confused by it.
Hell yeah.
Oh wow.
And so
You know
I'll
those are
say-
my favorite.
I'll say that one first. It's three sentences, sorry. And it comes from Damn Brown. Gave it 1 out of 10, said, "Tomorrow never knows." They said this: which rental car service starred in Yesterday, Avis or Hertz? Whoever knows will get a car for rent. Tomorrow never knows.
What?
That's great. That's great.
I don't even remember a rental car in the movie.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing else. That was it. They didn't even give a rating. Did they give a rating?
Did they even give a
Well, they
rating?
gave it 1 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
What?
1 out of 10. That's awesome.
Oh man, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So then I got another one, a little boomer review
Okay. good.
by Ridge-M-1, giving it 1 out of 10. Also saying, "Where is the walrus?" They said this: truth be known, the picture is such dreck this Beatles aficionado could only stand 30 minutes before kicking himself for wasting $10. All this cat heard was McCartney, and then some more McCartney. The title should have been a warning taken seriously, but who knew Paul equal Fab Four, according to Boyle's interpretation of the group, that seriously changed the culture of the world. Do yourself a favor and watch 8 days a week, even though director Howard provides the G rating of the group's antics as opposed to the R-rated effort, which knowledgeable fans would have enjoyed immensely. The boys, as George Martin always referred to them, did not write and play their music in PC times, which is the main reason art is rarely created today.
What a gatekeeper.
Yeah.
What a
This is
fucking
the
gatekeeper.
gate.
Could you imagine? Oh, it's nothing compared to that R-rated stuff that real proper knowledgeable Beatles fans would know.
He's just taking random swings. I love it.
Yeah.
Like, just-
Like the random jab at the end, like, oh, art doesn't exist anymore.
That's what it was about. That entire thing was about that. It wasn't even about the Beatles. It was just like, art is dead. Nothing matters anymore.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know. My parents are younger than the boomers, but they like this movie.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are nostalgic about the Beatles music will enjoy it.
Yeah.
I like Yesterday. I think it's a sweet little popcorn movie. I don't think it's that much deeper than that, but it doesn't need to be, because the movie really has three goals. So the plot and the premise is pretty outlandish. The whole world after a blackout forgets all the Beatles music, and essentially the Beatles are erased from everyone's memory. They're not just who they are as people, but everything they've written. Even the name doesn't exist, and the only person who seems to remember is a guy is a loser musician named Jack, wonderfully played, I think, by Himesh Patel, who I had never seen before until this movie. And if you can get past this weird premise, then this movie's really cool. I really like it. I think the three big standouts to me are Danny Boyle, the director, Himesh Patel, the star, and Lily James, who plays the romantic lead. I think all three of them excel in their efforts in this movie. The movie tries to do, like I said, three things. It wants to make you appreciate the Beatles' music, and then it also wants to make you. It also wants to paint a portrait of the kind of that fame monster that we briefly touched on earlier, and then it also wants to talk about what the about a love story, basically, kind of like a Hannah Montana dynamic, like should I should I stay or should I go type deal.
Yeah.
And
Hannah Montana sang that song?
I don't know how to describe this dichotomy between like
Yeah.
your the
Right.
life you have at home and the life you have as
Yeah.
as a celebrity. But yeah, I guess I'll start with Danny Boyle. Like, if you like him, you'll probably enjoy this movie's visual style. If you're like not super into his style, this definitely won't sell you because he does everything Danny Boyle does, like that classic, really quick paced new wave style editing, where he breaks the 180 a lot. Heavy Dutch angles, L cuts to random memories. He uses mirrors a lot, and but I think he's very necessary for this type of story. He excels at taking the outlandish premises and using outlandish visuals to tell that story while making you care about what happens. Himesh Patel, I mentioned before, is a good lead. You see his journey in his face and in his voice, and I think he handles all the covers really well of these iconic songs. I think Lily James is charming as usual. We always feel for the one who gets friend zoned, and she absolutely owns that trope. She gets a lot of great lines, like "The world is full of miracles," like Benedict Cumberbatch being a sex symbol. And imagine stepping into her shoes for a second. Imagine being British and trying to pretend that you're hearing Beatles songs for the first time. That's very, very difficult to do, and so I applaud her for that. But sadly, beyond that, there's not that much else. She doesn't have that much else to do, which for a leading lady of that caliber, I think is a shame. I think her character is kind of underwritten. I think also where the movie falters for me is in the rock star's journey part of the story.
Yeah.
Where the movie excels for me is appreciating the Beatles' music and what it means to people and why that music matters and why it's important to keep it alive no matter what. And so that part being super compelling for me, like I didn't like the fame stuff as much. I've seen it a billion times, and this one didn't really break the mold for me. I think it could have been like 8 minutes shorter. Keep Kit McKinnon. I like Kit McKinnon a lot. She's great. And it starts out okay, but then like I said, when it gets to that, like, oh, should I stay with the love of my life or should I be a celebrity? Like, I know what he's gonna choose. I know exactly what he's gonna do, and whatever. I have a few more points to make, but we can go a little bit more in depth later. What did you think of the movie, Jared?
Did you give a score?
Oh yeah,
7.2. 7.2. I think it's better than I thought it was gonna be. I'd give it a 6.8, but no, I'm gonna actually change that. We're gonna go 6.5. But I like it. I think it's, like you said, it's a fun popcorn film. It's not gonna be much more than that. It kind of, the premise is like to just grab Beatles fans in and kind of get their ass in the seat. But I think it rewards them for doing that. I think you get something out of it. It's a nice tribute to the Beatles. But I don't know, the whole thing kind of falls apart the second you think about any aspect of the film
Yeah.
a little more in depth.
Sure.
How is this guy a terrible musician, but remembers so much musical notation of the Beatles songs and like can execute it perfectly.
Yeah.
And so you get like a lot of holes like that. But if you don't really like, if you kind of just turn your brain off, you're like, I'm just gonna sit and enjoy this movie. You'll
That's what I
enjoy
did,
it.
yeah.
Like it's a fun movie. It's got great music, despite mostly being covers. They're done well, and they come at good points in the film. Like the one that kind of sticks out to me most is when he plays "Yesterday" for the first time. Like that's a cool moment, and like you feel like the weight of like maybe what it would have felt like if you were there when they first played "Yesterday." And so it does capture that Beatles music and like the impact and how it makes people feel and how it resonates with people almost immediately. It does a good job of that. I think you were spot on with your thoughts on Lily James. I think she's underutilized to all hell. She has a super interesting character, but she kind of just disappears for a while, and then she's like, "I'm back. Remember me? I love you." Um, and so it's kind of whatever. I really like Lily James. I'm excited to see what she does in the future. I mentioned Baby Driver earlier. Fell in love with her, and I love it. But I think you're right. How Mesh carries the film a bit. I think he does a great job, and he's a pretty well written character as well.
Yeah.
Like like he's got charm. You're rooting for him. He has charisma, which is kind of one reason you might believe that he's all of a sudden famous because he remembered some songs.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not like a mind-blowing film or anything. I thought this was my second watch, I thought it was going to be the worst movie I've ever seen. I was like, there's no way this is going to be good. It's just gonna be terrible. But I ended up enjoying it. Like I had a good time, and
Yeah.
I think that's where you gotta draw the line with this one.
Yeah. I felt the same way going in my first time, but this is my second viewing, so I knew what to expect, and like I think yeah. I feel what you said. Renato?
Yeah, no, I mean unlike you two. This was my first time watching it. I kind of thought it was. I also kind of had the notion that it wasn't going to be very good. Particularly when I saw Danny Boyle's name, I was like, and I mean no offense, but I thought it was like, oh, Danny Boyle's just trying to get some money right now, maybe to like fund his next project or something.
The next Train Spotting movie.
Then he's making Slumdog Millionaire 2. So there you go. But I actually ended up really enjoying the movie too, mainly because of the music and just the relationship thing, like the relationship side of it with Jack and Lily James's character. I think that's like where most of the interest for me comes in. I agree with BJ, where it's like I don't really like the fame side of it. Like it felt really kind of it almost kind of like took me out of it a bit. I do really like Kate McKinnon, but I feel like she's always typecasted to be these like in your face, like wide-eyed snarl, like, do you understand me, punk? Like she's like,
What do you mean?
She's that.
Did you see The Spy Who Dumped Me?
I haven't seen that one, so maybe I have to.
You're the only person who has.
That's true. It was a major flop, but it's an excellent action comedy.
Okay, I'll give it a watch for you, man. But
I do
in this,
like her a bit more than you're giving credit for in this one, just because she's like, oh, you're just a number to me. Like she's just super like upfront, and she's I don't give a shit about your backstory.
I think like for me, like what I'm trying to say is like progressively she got more and more like. I was like, okay, I'm not really like enjoying her character as much. Like, I understand what she was there for, right? I mean, it's very like on the nose, but I think at some point, I think like they cranked that up so high to the point that like you kind of forgot that she was like at some point like a human being, and she's just like an angry like representation of like the music industry, right? And that's fine. I didn't really enjoy. The Ed Sheeran parts, I don't know. They just seem kind of
What do you
really
mean?
odd to me. Yeah, the only part I liked with him was when Rocky, the dumb bumbling like friend, who's like, "Oh hey Ed, I love the rapping," and Ed like, "Really?" And he goes, "Nah, just kidding, man." Like that part is incredible.
I like that most of his scenes are dedicated to putting him down. Like
Exactly right. Even still, I think that one and obviously the two big moments when like they're having like a write off and like who can write the best song in 10 minutes and like Jack is like done and then Ed is just like, oh well, I thought well I mean I guess I'm not the best songwriter ever. I guess I'm just gonna go. He just like sulks away. Two good moments, but overall, like, I don't know. I haven't seen Ed in anything else, but I can't help but just be distracted with the fact that he's there. I know he's playing himself, but it just doesn't gel well with me.
Dude, the fact that his ringtone is "Shape of You," like,
yep,
It's
perfect.
I firmly believe it actually is.
it actually is. Oh,
Like
my
I
goodness.
thought the movie would be up his ass a little more when I saw he was in it. But like his character is just up his own ass.
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, no, just oh, sorry. Just sorry, little, just really quickly.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. I will say though, I actually kind of like this more so than like if they were to make a standard like studio biopic, especially like one of those like just quick cash grabs. To be honest, I prefer this. It was a nice change of pace for me. Himesh Patel too. Great stuff. I think he's really. Jared said it best. Like where it's like he's so charismatic. I think he carries himself really well. Even playing like I guess a loser musician, he's still really likable. You can't help but root for him super hard. I think like this movie is just like how you guys said. It's just fun popcorn stuff. I don't think you're gonna be incredibly moved by anything spectacular. It is a sweet movie. The music's great. The performances are great. I like that Himesh like did all the music and did all the stuff. So like he sounds great too. Usually like when actors sing, you kind of always have this hesitance to it. Sometimes you have traumatic experiences. Russell Crowe in Les Miserables. I know that he's like the punching bag, but he's a punching bag for a reason. Three vocal coaches does not equal good singing. But that being said, I did really enjoy most of the movie. The premise, I think BJ said it best, where it's like I think like if you can't like the premise is kind of silly, where it's like everyone forgot the Beatles and everyone also forgot little tiny other things, like there's no Coke, there's no Harry Potter.
Coke, Harry Potter, and cigarettes is everything.
It's nonsense. But if you can ignore all that stuff and just accept it for what it is, it's just a nice little fun, sweet, kind of romantic musical kind of movie, then I think you'll have fun with it. And I gave it a 7.1 out of 10.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. I think that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad the movie exceeded your guys' expectations, because I too watched the trailer and thought this would be nonstop stupidity, but I really enjoyed it, especially the second time, because I knew what was going to happen, and like I just was in it for the ride. And
definitely,
I guess I can talk about Himesh Patel first, since that like he's like the most universally, at least on the Jared cast, liked part of this movie. He kind of starts off, he's got this interesting lyric in his uninteresting song, where he says it in the music festival, or it's the last line that he sings at the music festivals. I guess I'll always carry this load. That's my fate. I'll follow this road. So he has this kind of like, there's this crushing inevitability that's hanging over his head the entire movie. Like I'm not good enough. And so the movie's a lot of it is about finding your confidence. And and he starts out with this really like matted homeless man beard, this hipster beard, and he wears it like armor, like he hides behind it. And then he's forced into this crazy situation with no armor, no beard. It's just him, and then he's the spotlight of the entire world is on him. And so you get the kind of this really cool, like, imposter syndrome, the movie. And he's constantly on edge with his family and his friends and with others. And I like the way that he encounters the Beatles music and in his head, like, and the way that he, his frustration with, like, oh man, like, these are the greatest songs of all time, but like nobody appreciates them until I like, and especially with his parents, like I love those scenes as well. But I think that's all like super necessary when you're dealing with the kind of the big takeaway from the Beatles music, which I think is the big takeaway from the movie, the idea that all you need is love. And so he, the whole movie, he's pursuing this idea that that he needs to be famous and that he needs to get his music out there, even though his music is crap. And even if he needs to steal other people's music, he's gonna get to where he wants to be. And at the end of the movie, he realizes, like, oh, and like literally all I need is love. And it culminates in, I guess this is the biggest spoiler that we're giving for this movie, where he finally he encounters other people who remember the Beatles music, and rather than scold him for stealing, they thank him for keeping it alive and for helping them remember all these Eleanor Rigby and all these things, these complex songs and these meaningful songs. And that's kind of where the movie succeeds for me. But the part that would take it over, like, because like movies like this might hit like 6 point something for me normally, but the part that I really loved was meeting John Lennon.
Crazy that they got him to play himself too.
No,
I know, crazy, right?
But like that's the heart of the movie for me, is that scene where, like, the whole movie he feels bad about this, and he feels terrible that nobody knows where the Beatles are, and that he and that his whole journey is for nothing, and that because he plays the biggest show that he's ever played in his life, and the show is all him, it's all just him, and he plays it in his hometown, and it's so triumphant, and he just feels empty at the end. And then when he meets John Lennon literally 5 minutes later in the movie, he realizes, like, oh, this is why it's worth it, because John's alive, and because like, no matter what, like, I get like this, like, beautiful soul finally found happiness, and he got to grow old, and he got to have a family. And I really like that about the movie. That was the most emotion. That was the emotional, like, heart of the movie that I really liked. Yeah, I already went into the stuff I didn't like.
Well, can I add to that real quick?
Go for it. Yeah.
I do like that part a lot. When he meets John, I think meeting John almost came as like a humbling moment to him, because even though I think he was struggling with the fact that he was, obviously not writing these songs, he was just memorizing them. I still think, like, he maybe had like some kind of like duty to uphold, this self-righteous duty that he had in his head.
Yeah.
So when meeting John, and John is just like, he says, the quote is, "You want a good life? It's not complicated. Tell the girl you love that you love her, and to tell the truth to everyone whenever you want." Or, yeah, I think whenever you want, sorry. So, like, straightforward, that's like the theme. I know it's like more on the nose, but I think it's extremely powerful. Especially coming from John, because how you mentioned, where it's just like, I think having Jack realize that John lived a nice life without even becoming a part of the Beatles or even becoming a Beatle or anything like that, he was content, and I think that's what the message is also like the fun part of life is living it, right? It's not to say that you can't become famous or become influential, but you don't need to be to have a nice life, you know. And then just to add on to like the emotional scenes, I really love the scene where Lily James comes to talk to him, and tells him straight up like, "No, I can't do this anymore. Like, you know, you can either do this or that." Right before his performance,
In the hotel or
yeah, in
Okay,
the
yeah,
hotel,
yeah.
and like I think that scene is, she's so good at she's so good at emotive like emotions. Like, don't get me wrong, Himesh does a good job. Yeah, right. So, right. But what I mean in particular, like just really like coming off like hurt is so intense and like so relatable. Again, how you mentioned like you're rooting for her because she's like that person that friend that got put in the person that got put in the friend zone. I mean, I don't know what it is, but like for me it bothers the hell out of me that like it took him so long to kind of realize it. And then like at the end, like having that whole display of like, oh, I don't know what it was, but having that scene, I love that scene a lot. The one in the hotel when they're talking, that like the scene at the end where like he's talking to her straight up, like in the big old thing, and he's like, "Oh, all the music's free." It didn't hit me as hard as the hotel one did, and so like at least for me, it kind of like deflated that scene a tiny bit because I feel like we were retreading the same stuff over and over again. It was like, oh, it's, you know, I love you, but you don't love me because you want to do that. And then he's like, ah, damn, dilemma. Go through with like with the music stuff, and then again another one, like she calls and she's like, oh hey, you know, I'm really happy for you. Also, I'm dating Gavin, and you're like, oh, well, dilemma again. Oh man, blah, 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 blah. You know, like it just kind of like for me, I think it kind of became a bit too repetitive at the end, and it kind of like lost a bit of steam. But yeah, that's sorry I took over that, but that was something that was kind of in my head. But there you go.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. What are your thoughts, Jared, about or anything you got to expand on that?
What are your thoughts about the movie? I do. You mentioned the John Lennon scene, and before you kind of talked about it, I wasn't a fan, but you kind of convinced me. It just felt like, I don't know. It added to the like holes because I'm like, okay, why? I guess he was murdered because he was a Beatle, and so it would kind of make sense. But I was like, why are you here? Like, why are you just appearing in this film now?
And just the idea that he was so young and he was like so earnestly and so publicly looking for this kind of spiritual fulfillment, and he never got there. I think that's like the hardest hitting part of knowing about his death and knowing like how sudden it was. And yeah, so yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it works at the end of the day. I was a little like thrown off. I was like, why are you what? But I think I don't know, because this movie, I have such conflicting feelings about it. Like at some points it captures like the essence of like what the Beatles are and should be. But then like other times you get like the giant concert at the end is just empty. Like it's supposed to be, or the like stadium show where he professes his love to Lily. It just feels empty the entire time. And I like the show is bad. It's just badly done. Like the crowd is like CGI'd to shit. The music just sounds like they added a little reverb to it. It's supposed to be like the sweet moment between him and Lily, but like, I don't know, it feels empty because the moment felt empty before it, and we already got like the hotel scene that Renato was talking about. And so like you get like high points of the film, like when he sings Yesterday to his friends, and then like low points like that where it just is so much nothingness to it, and you like lose the charm and you lose the magic of the Beatles. And so like, I don't know, a lot of my thoughts are just kind of, it does this well, but it also sucks at this point when it's trying to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I agree that the scenes that the scene feels empty, that the climax feels a little empty, but I do like the way it's shot by Christopher Ross, the cinematographer, because I like the, you know, I said this like 3 episodes ago. Creative 2 shots are like my biggest weakness, and you know, having her face behind him, just only slightly out of focus, but it's like giant. It's projected out on the jumbotron, and then he's like in a medium. I really like that shot. Those shots.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you guys. Favorite scenes?
Well, obviously the hotel scene. I think that one's the most heart-wrenching one for me. It reminded me of the confrontation between Riz Ahmed and I think Olivia Cook in The Sound of Metal, but light, like diet Sound of Metal.
I was like, they're not in this. What are you talking about?
No. Sorry, no. It's like it reminded me of
okay.
the scene from like Sound of Metal.
Okay.
Have you seen it, guys?
I have seen it. Yes.
Okay. Well, it's just like it kind of gave me that same vibe of like emotional weight. Obviously, like I enjoy The Sound of Metal more, but like the point is just that I just really like the emotional weight that comes from it. I think it's just like somebody who's kind of like willing, like, who's given everything, and has gone unnoticed, willing to just accept and just move on. And I think that, I don't know, I just really like the whole dichotomy. I think that they work really well together. Lily James and Himesh Patel, they both feel like they both represent the weight of what's going on extremely well. And it's probably the most memorable for me. And then obviously, I know White Jared didn't really necessarily enjoy it, but just seeing John Lennon kind of was like, whoa. And it was just such a really cool moment. I also love how John himself, if he's John in this universe himself, he's like, well, what a crazy person. He just like, can I hug you? And he's like, what? I love how
help.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I think it was a quirky scene that was really well done. And although like the message is very on the nose, I think that just having John Lennon, even if obviously it isn't him, but like having John Lennon be there is such a huge presence. And I think it's just a cool moment.
The casting is insane for it. Like, he looks just like him.
Yeah.
Like, it's spot on.
It's actually Robert Carlyle.
Robert Carlyle, yeah.
Yeah, shout out.
I do think it'd be hilarious if they had like Yoko screaming like a banshee in the basement or something. She's losing her mind still.
Oh man.
But I guess I can't ask for too much. Yeah, for me, the hotel scene is up there. One of my favorites is when he plays the festival. I don't remember the name.
Oh,
of the
yeah,
festival.
the tiny little tent thing.
Yeah, just like the pan over to like reveal that it's just the shittiest show ever. It was hilarious to me.
Yeah.
When he's playing Let It Be for his parents and his neighbor, and he keeps getting interrupted. He's like, this is watching like Da Vinci paint right now. What are you guys doing? I like that he's weirdly full of himself in like a not taking credit kind of way. Like it's just a cool character trait where he's like, after he performs Yesterday, which is also one of my favorites, and he's like, it's the greatest song ever written. What do you mean? Everybody's like, chill, dude.
Yeah, right.
Like it's just a funny thing that he's got. The Fever Dream where he's on James Corden. A lot of people like hated on it. I like it. James Corden, shitty actor, but playing himself, like, he's a natural. He does great. And I just think it's a cool thing to show like his fear of like being called out and like somebody catching on that he's a fraud. It just adds a lot to that imposter syndrome that we mentioned, and so I like it for that. And yeah, I think that's about it. I like that we get another Lily James driving off with her love after their lives were uprooted scene. That's always welcome.
Yeah.
You know what's one thing that kind of did bother me like about the movie was like the people who knew the Beatles too, just like their plan of action. Like, did they were like, hey dude, let's just walk around and like they just hold like a submarine like ominously in the background, and it's just like you could have easily just approached them and been like, well, I heard you on the radio, the Beatles, amazing, thank you for what you do, see you later. But they just were like, we're here to get you.
And like he's performed Yellow Submarine, so how do we know that's not just like, oh, you're a fan of his, and they just like that song a lot. Like it's weird that he like clues into it.
All right.
Yeah, they're always like lurking like a It Follows villain. Like
Yeah.
just like standing in the crowd, just like staring at people and shit. It's weird.
Yeah, those are all great scenes. I like James Corden in Begin Again. I don't know. I don't think
I
he's.
didn't see him.
Oh, okay. That's
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
I've only seen him in Cats.
okay. Well, everybody's shitty. In
I know.
Cats, but
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, my favorite scene, besides the reveal that John's alive, is every scene with Sanjeev Bhaskar, who plays Jack's father. I think he's one of the highlights of my movie, or of the movie. One of my favorite highlights of the movie. When he's trying to play Let It Be, he's like, I already heard the beginning 3 times. And like it's like the neighbor comes in, like, what's the song called? Leave It Be. No, it's Let It Be. Yeah, I love that. When he meets Ed Sheeran in the kitchen, he's like, you know, you look a lot like Ed Sheeran. I am Ed Sheeran. Oh, right. Well done. And then just walks away.
Just walks away.
And then when he's up, like it's his son's it's the biggest concert of his son's life, and he's finally come full circle. He's come back to his hometown, and it's this really climactic moment in his son's career. And he's like, "Are you gonna eat the tuna sandwiches?"
And he takes them.
He takes the whole platter, and he's like, "Man, this is such a great day."
Yeah, right. That's a man who enjoys the simple things.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely want to work with that actor anytime in the future. Hit me up,
Yeah.
Mr. Bhaskar.
Him and Rocky were pretty unsung heroes.
Yeah.
In the film, a lot of
So
good
good.
levity from the both of them.
Another Rocky moment that stands out for me is when he's just like telling like Jack, he's like, I know what my purpose is now, Jack. I'm meant to be the servant of the greatest songwriter of all time. And then when he like says, it's all free, he's like, oh my God, I have nowhere to go, man. Please take me in.
Yeah.
That's great.
Man. Yeah.
They missed a kind of opportunity with Rocky though. Like if he started being named Rocky and then after the blackout he just had a different name because he was named after the Beatles song.
Yeah.
I was hoping for that for some reason. I was like, oh, it'd be cool. He's got a different name. It's gonna be confusing. It's a good bit.
Yeah.
Rocky.
I also kind of wish there were cameos for Paul and Ringo, like just as randos hearing their music.
Yeah, definitely.
Like imagine Jack
All the
plays.
people.
Well, imagine Jack plays Octopus's Garden, and it goes on the radio, and then like he's listening to it in a taxi, and the taxi driver turns around, and it's Ringo. Is like, I really like this song.
And Paul's like, I think it's trash.
Yes, dude, that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
To be honest, that would have been great.
Okay.
Apparently, Paul really liked the movie though. He
Yeah.
said that he saw it and enjoyed it. So.
They all enjoyed it. Paul and his wife snuck into a theater
Not
to
all
watch
of
it.
them,
Oh, really?
because
Oh, because
Oh, because they're dead.
I was referring to. Sorry, I was referring to the widows of John and George as well.
Yeah.
They both like the movie.
Nice.
And Ringo liked the movie as well. Any other notes you guys got about it that you want to bring up?
not really.
Sounds Gucci. Well, Yesterday is available to rent on Amazon Prime it's actually on sale right now. It's $1.99. So get on that. It's a fun movie. If you're a fan of the Beatles, you'll probably like it because you get to hear their music, and you get to hear a bunch of British people pretending to hear it for the first time, and and they're all good at it. You can find A Hard Day's Night on HBO Max or as part of the Criterion Collection. I have it on Blu-ray. Watched it. It's so
Ooh.
nice. It's so nice. And you can find the Compleat Beatles somewhere online.
On your local Craigslist ad.
Yeah, you can.
It's
you
on
can-
YouTube, but it's like in 26 parts and demonetized and muted for some of it.
Dude, they removed big old chunks of the movie. They were just like, oh, here's part 1, 2, 3, and now 15, and you're like, what?
Yeah, man, it's unfortunate that that movie's not out like in full, but you can find it. I found it a VHS rip on archive.org. I don't recommend people steal movies normally, but if
When
you know,
there's
it's
no
not like
options.
it's not like like Paul and Ringo aren't drowning in cash.
Right.
They're fine. They are fine. So yeah, go check it out.
You can thank Paul for that. Buying the rights and shit.
Faux show. And you can also check out a couple other great things. We did the entire history of the Beatles, doing little mini album reviews of their studio discography, and you can check that out on Listen to This, the podcast, on any podcast streaming platform that you can find, and you can also follow Listen to This on Instagram. Follow the Jaredcast on Instagram as well, and also follow Renato, who's back for the second time.
Oh yeah.
Thank
Is it
you
second
again
or
for.
It's
So what?
like I think this is the third time. This is the third time I'm here.
I meant returning for the second time. My bad.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
My bad. But yeah, he's got a show coming out soon. When?
Yeah.
Do you have like an ETA for Glimpse or no?
Honestly, we've been expecting it for this month, but unfortunately some things happened with our subject who couldn't actually come up with some of the necessary things that we needed else, so we're gonna have to push it back into hopefully mid-July. So mid-July we're aiming for it, so in a couple more weeks we'll have some announcements that we'll put up. So if you want to be updated with that, please go follow me, Domo_arigato_Mr. Renato. That's me. Go find me, go keep up to date with that. And the show's called Glimpse, so if you feel like looking up the show too, we're on Instagram also at glimpse_show. So thank you. Yeah, there you go. Just keep your eye out for that.
Yeah. Alrighty, audience. We love you. Follow those links. Goodbye.
See ya.